Hey fam, what's going on today? So let me get into it. I actually kind of wanted to talk about something else, but I'm actually going to talk about politics and character. I'm just going to state this to get it out of the way. I think it's kind of foundational for everything I may say moving forward. So, I hesitate to say this because I'm not trying to put a target on myself and I'm not trying to pick a fight. In many ways, I find if you have extreme views, oftentimes people leave you to your own devices. You may get an extreme following, but basically many people with extreme views end up being self-defeating, right? Their views are so fringe that they destroy themselves. Whereas in many ways, I believe those who are the most reasonable, the most rational, the most effective are actually the greatest threat to the establishment, to the system that be, right? So I hesitate to say this, right? I'm not trying to pick a fight. I got enough problems, but I'm saying this again in a quest for understanding and just reaching out to everybody, trying to build this better world that we want. So here's the deal. Politics, right? Now, personally, I consider myself on the far left. Now, you go far enough left, you end up going full circle kind of thing. But I consider myself on the far left. Now, if you're on the right, you may just turn this right off. And, I'm not trying to convince anybody, again, to each their own. I think that would be foolish, as we aim for understanding. I'm looking to bridge a gap here. But again, I consider myself on the far left. Now, what puts me on the far left? It's very basic, right? I believe kids should have something to eat. Kids should have access to education. Kids shouldn't get bombed. And actually, I believe the world's abstract and there's complexities, but there are some places I draw a line. And one of them is children getting killed, right? Now, again, that's where I feel like I'm left on the far left, because you'll find many people who consider themselves on the left, let's say Democrats per se, who may justify war crimes in some ways, bombing of children. And they'll, I'll say something like, hey, kids shouldn't get bombed. And they'll say, yes, I agree with that, but it's complex. And I say, yes, it's complex, but I still draw a firm line there, right? So again, I'm on the far left because I believe all kids should have access to food, education, things of that sort. Now, people on the right, again, I don't hate people on the right. I don't even dislike people on the right per se, because I have so many interests. I've been in so many different circles that I've come to understand so many different sides. And I'm not trying to please everybody, right? I'm not trying to play both sides. However, from my perspective, I understand and see many sides of this equation. Now, again, where I differ with the right, now let me say this, let me take a step back, right? So, again, I've met people in all these different circles, and I have friends on both sides of the aisle, both sides of the spectrum. The place where I differ with people on the right per se is when things happen like when children are getting separated from their parents at the border, right? Those things, they affect me deeply on an empathetic level, right? I remember my daughter, she was about 2 or 3 at the time, and they were describing how kids are being taken from their parents. We asked my daughter, what are our names? And she just said mommy and daddy, right? She didn't know our names. She was just a baby. And that just brought a tear to us, And so that's where I differ with a lot of views on the right. Again, I believe in just basic caring for others, kind of thing. Now, with that said, again, bringing it back to center, I believe all of us just want what's best for our families, what's best for our kids. And that's where we start, right? Now, I aim not to judge, right, for numerous reasons. One of them is because we don't know people. We don't know people in depth. We just know what's on the surface, right? So for me to judge you simply on who you voted for, the flag that you're holding, or whatever, is on the surface, I just feel like that's inaccurate. It's incomplete information, right? And the fact is, what I understand is that, let's say you are a Republican or a Democrat, whatever, most often it's simply what your parents raised you to be. Right? In addition, we all have personal experiences which I cannot discount, right? Maybe somebody on the other spectrum wronged you. Maybe they didn't wrong you, but the side that you're on, maybe you feel like they're resonating with what you're feeling, right? Maybe you were bullied and you feel like, oh, I want to be tough on crime because I hate the experience that I suffered coming up, or whatever the case is, right? So not to confuse it, but everyone has their own circumstance, their own perspective, and we're divided across these aisles, right? Now, with that said, all right, so again, I'm stating where I am. I'm on the far left because I believe kids should have enough to eat and they should have education. Now, the funny thing about it is, again, I have no moral high ground here. I want my neighbor's child to be educated because I'm an empath and because I care about them. But honestly, just for purely selfish reasons, I don't want to live in a nation of idiots, right? I want everyone in my community to be educated and have access to healthcare, right? I don't want my neighbor to have to consider crime to put food on their table, right? I want them to be cared for. Plus, I'm just a curious individual, right? I want your son to be as educated as possible so they can come out with did I say son? You know, your son, your daughter, your child, whoever. I want them to be as educated as possible to create that next great innovation that's going to take humanity to the next level. You know, I have so many interests. I want to go to the moon, right? And if your child is going to help in the creation of all that, you know, I encourage all of you. Now, so again, okay, that's politics. Now, character. Again, let's not ye be judged, but we are going to assess each other, right? And based on my assessment of others, it helps me navigate this world. So it makes me think of, you know, my father, what he used to do on political debates. He would actually mute the television and just look at their body language and assess from there. On the same token, you know, and here's kind of my point of it too. You know, I encourage you to stay open-minded when it comes to this. And again, not to let yourself be trampled on, not to put yourself in a disadvantageous position or, you know, excessively vulnerable. But the reality is, humans are complex, right? And I believe part of intelligence is understanding complexities. And what I have seen is that there are people who you might despise, you know, there are right-wing people who you might despise, who will run into danger to save you, who will run into a burning building to save you. On the same token, I've seen people on the left who could talk about veganism and peace and love or whatever, who will leave you in a ditch, right? Who will step over you to escape. And again, these are generalizations, but humans are complex, right? And I think it's easier to navigate if you understand these complexities. And again, on a positive note, you know, I'm a realist, but as an optimist, I look for these opportunities in people. One of my favorite things in sales, one of my favorite things in life is when I'm pleasantly surprised by people. I've had numerous experiences, you know, when I was canvassing and doing environmental fundraising. I remember one time I was standing at Rockefeller Center and I wasn't enjoying the energy there. You know, I felt like it was just a bunch of finance people who didn't care about the world or whatever. And I remember this guy walked up to me, this elder gentleman, bow tie on, looking like Daddy Warbucks. He walked up to me, put his hands on my shoulder, and he's like, "You're doing good work." You know, and I was just so endeared. On the same token, I have tried to stop people to talk about the environment, talk about the rainforest. And they would say to me, I'd be like, "Hey, let's talk about the rainforest." And they would say to me, "I do yoga," right? Now, again, you hear that once and you're like, "Oh, that's strange." But then you hear that numerous times and you're like, "Wow, that's really weird. Like, what's going on here?" I remember at least I had one individual who came back to me after saying I do yoga when I asked him to talk about the rainforest. He came back around. He's like, "Man, I heard what I said." He's like, "I don't know what I was thinking." He's like, "That's ridiculous," right? But my point is that don't judge people, right? Oftentimes it's just a reflection of, again, what we're feeling, our inability to face the conflicts in ourselves. But if we want a better world, we have to face these conflicts and get through it. You know, I don't know how much we could save the world. You know, that's where it goes into a longer discussion. But when I look at serious conflicts like Israel, Palestine, and the endless conflicts that are going on in the world, I'm like, how are we ever going to help the world if we can't even just get along with our neighbor here? You know, so I encourage you to face these conflicts and to look at these conflicts as opportunities to make the world better and create the world that we want. Let me know what you think in the comments. My heart's up a little bit. I'm doing my run here, but love you all. Thanks for tuning in. More to come. Let me know your questions. Leave your comments. Love, love, love. Peace to you all.